It's been 20 years since Bentley introduced the Continental GT, and in doing so, reinvented the British brand under Volkswagen's ownership. It came after decades of building very luxurious, but how should I put this delicately, stuffy cars. They made an older-fashioned kind of luxury car for an older demographic. The Continental GT, though, injected some youthful exuberance into the brand, and it's still doing that 20 years later. Today we're driving this. It's the Continental GTS convertible. So let's take it for a spin. Now before I jump behind the wheel, let's take a quick look at pricing. And the obvious joke to make here is, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. But that's only half true. That's because over the last 20 years, this ultra premium segment of the market has become very competitive. And so brands need to sell on value just as much as they do the badge on the bonnet. But obviously there's a big difference between value and affordability. The Continental GT range begins at $430,300 for the coupe, and the Continental GTS convertible we're testing here starts at just over $568,000. And that is the starting price, because Bentley is a brand that allows near infinite customization of its cars. So the list price is really only the beginning. This specific Continental GTS convertible you see here actually totals more than $667,000 once the extras are included. Now, if you want more details on the Bentley Continental GT, make sure you check out my in-depth written review at carsguide.com.au. Now let's talk about design. And perhaps the most interesting aspect of design when it comes to the Continental GT is how much it hasn't changed over the last 20 years. This is basically Bentley's version of the Porsche 911. It's all about subtle evolution rather than any big radical change from one generation to the next. It is unmistakably a Bentley. It's got some trademark design elements that really do give it a familiar look. As for this specific model, the Continental GTS, it has the black line specification to make it stand out, which ironically, it doesn't actually stand out too much because our car is painted black, but if you get an alternative color, you'll notice more prominently this giant grille, these lower intakes, some of the badge work and other elements that are typically bright chrome work have been blacked out for a more subtle look, if a $500,000 luxury Grand Tourer can ever really be subtle. As for the interior design, well, it's just as trademark Bentley as the exterior. It's full of luxury touches. You know, there's fantastic materials used throughout. The attention to detail on things like the clock and just the metalwork, intricate patterns on these small details. Just everything about it feels very premium. It is a very comfortable and luxurious environment to be in.
Bentley is famous for its big engines, specifically its W12. But for the Continental GTS, there's a 4-litre twin-turbo V8 under the bonnet. While it may have less cylinders than Bentley's flagship engine, it still makes a very healthy 404 kilowatts of power and 770 newton-meters of torque. So it has little trouble getting this big car moving, sprinting from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in just 4.1 seconds, which is very rapid for a car that weighs more than 2 tons. The engine is paired to an 8-speed dual-clutch transmission and an active all-wheel drive system. As for fuel efficiency, it should come as no shock that a big luxury convertible with a twin-turbo V8 engine uses premium unleaded at a notably high rate. The official combined urban highway cycle is 12.5 litres per 100 Ks, but if you're spending most of your time around town rather than driving to your country weekender, you'll probably be looking at returns in the mid to high teens based on our experience. Fortunately, it does have a 90-litre fuel tank, so Bentley claims a driving range of 720 kilometres, which should allow you to enjoy a road trip.
Perhaps the biggest single thing that the Continental GT changed when it joined the Bentley lineup was the dynamic character. This is a sporty car. Before this, it was all about luxury, and frankly, it was all about being driven. The Conti GT, well, you wanted to drive it, and with this latest model, it really does continue that tradition. This is a really genuinely enjoyable car to drive. It starts with the engine. That big V8 makes a great noise. It's a real sort of throaty rumble whenever you need any performance, and there it goes. I mean, it just sounds fantastic. And that's in regular Bentley mode. If you dial up sport, it gets even more raucous. It'll snap and crackle and pop like a little, you know, hot hatch. It's actually sounds genuinely fun. But equally, if you just want a luxury car, the Conti GT can do that too. It rides quite smoothly. Obviously, it's got fantastic suspension, so even on these huge wheels, it soaks up the bumps great, and it's really comfortable and easy to drive. It is a big vehicle. You will, you know, make no mistake, for a convertible, this is sizable. You've got a lot of car to move around, so it can be tricky to navigate parking spots and things like that in narrow environments because it is physically such a huge vehicle. But overall, it is actually fun to drive. As for the convertible aspect, it's fantastic. The buffeting is quite limited. Doesn't have a wind deflector in the back, but just with the side windows up, it feels quite good. And then if you do feel a bit cold, well, you've got seat heaters and even a little fan there for your neck in the seat that'll blow and keep you warm on a crisp winter's day. In terms of interior practicality, frankly, it's a very large car, and it's a spacious interior, but there isn't acres of storage space. You've got a couple of little small item areas. It's fine. You can pop your odds and ends where they need to be. What is interesting about the practicality of the interior is, again, even though it's a more youthful car for Bentley, it is obviously still going to be bought by predominantly an older clientele who don't want this modern everything on a touchscreen. They're not interested in that. So you've got a range of switchgear through the center here. So basically every important function, there's actually a physical button for it, which makes it very user-friendly. And as for the back seats, well, in theory, they're there. I mean, they're certainly there. I personally wouldn't want to sit in them. They're going to be tight for space. You could, if you're a shorter driver potentially, and you don't mind cramping your passengers, you could probably get 4 in here, but they certainly wouldn't be comfortable. It's certainly not like riding in the back of a 4-door Bentley, that's for sure.
And even if the Continental GT convertible isn't an obvious family car, there are a pair of Isofix anchors in the back if you want to take the kids. As for putting anyone else in the back, space is very tight, so you'll need to compromise legroom in the front to squeeze anyone back there. The boot is a modest 235 litres, but Bentley has made the most of the space by having the roof retract into a small compartment that sits above the luggage area. You'll get maybe one large suitcase or a few smaller bags into the boot, which is probably what most owners will be looking to carry anyway. Because if you are looking for more room for either extra people or luggage, that's why Bentley has the Flying Spur. It's a 4-door sedan built on the same underpinnings as the Conti GT. Turning our attention to safety, the Continental GT is well equipped with airbags for all passengers as well as reversing cameras. And as you could reasonably expect, both in this day and age and at this price point, there's an array of active safety systems too. These include pre-collision warning, collision prevention assist, rear cross traffic alert, and multi-collision brake. And speaking of this price point, due to the cost of this car, it hasn't been crash tested by ANCAP, so there's no third-party safety rating. But of course, if you want more details on the safety features of the Bentley Continental GT or any car, make sure you check out our detailed reviews at carsguide.com.au. As for its ownership credentials, Bentley offers a 3 or 5 year servicing packages as part of the purchase price, which covers all the maintenance you need. The warranty is 3 years unlimited Ks, which is surprisingly short for such a well-built car, and given most brands have now moved to 5 years or longer.
So how best to sum up the Continental GT? Obviously, this is not a car for all people. It's a very niche product that will suit a very specific audience. It does have all those classic Bentley attributes, though, that has made the brand so successful over all these many decades. It's super luxurious and it stands out. It makes a statement as a car. But the Continental GT really does add that youthful exuberance that it did all those years ago when the first generation launched. It is genuinely a fun car to drive. And so it may be getting older, but it's most definitely still young at heart. Now, as always, if you want to know more about the Continental GT or any new car, make sure you check out carsguide.com.au for all the latest news, reviews and videos.